one. John Dennis, how you going?
Hey, how's it going, Lauren?
Sorry, this is kind of weird because we just we're speaking mid-conversation and then we start this podcast thing. But thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, just for folks out there who don't know me or you, John, you have a beautiful boutique universe called Sam Roberts LA, and it's named after your son, as you told me. And you, from my perspective, you make the most beautiful pieces of art, wearable art. You're making bespoke hats, vintage, remade kind of found objects remade into wearable objects. I love your hand-drawn pieces. Yes, super beautiful hand-drawn pieces. They remind me of tankas from Nepal and a bit of flower power. And there's some Vietnam vintage kind of influence and Native American. I guess from geographically that all that is kind of your context, except for the tankas. But yeah, I really love it.
Thank you.
Tell me your story. How did this all happen?
Well, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
We have a son. His name is Sam. And we named our little jam after him. And when Sam was born, coming up on 14 years ago, I was in a career where I was a real estate broker here in Southern California, and that's what my whole family does. And I had done it for years and years, and I never really liked it. And I had this, it was like a psychic shift happened when our son was born, where I just realized, I have no idea really what I'm to do with my life, but it certainly isn't this. And then I just kind of gave all that stuff up. And I had always been really interested and fascinated with vintage clothing since I was a young kid. And so I started to sell vintage clothing. And I don't know, maybe a couple years into doing that, I started taking a lot of things apart. And I really didn't even know why I was doing it at the time. But I'd find these just heavily distressed pieces and just dissect them with a razor blade, literally every thread, and just kind of lay everything out. And I guess I was just trying to understand how to put things back together. So that was it. It was just kind of having a child and knowing that at some point you'd have your child go, hey, what should I do with my life and what's important? And being a good parent, you're going to want to tell your child to follow their heart and their dreams and listen to that voice or that whisper within yourself. And how are you going to do that and not live it? So that was kind of the jumping off the high dive, so to speak, for me into this whole crazy jam. And it's been really fun.
Right on. I feel like that conversation is super relevant right now when people are industries are collapsing, the whole world economy is collapsing, and people are reevaluating what the meaning of life is, what purpose in life is. And
sure.
I mean, it's a scary time, but it's kind of a good time to kind of pause and think about what's really worth doing with your life, finding meaning or just living that rat race. I can totally, I'm probably someone maybe in your son's perspective. I myself, I came from art school, I studied fine arts at school and spent most of my working career, like freelancing, curating galleries, like, you know, just hustling to make a buck, because I feel like the arts, it's a really hard way of living to be in the arts, and it's a side of the world that people don't necessarily put monetary value on necessarily. So yeah, it's kind of a weird space to be in, but I wouldn't trade that for anything, because it gives my life so much richness and purpose and beauty. And I think the whole structure of the world, you know, this idea that you need stuff to be happy and you need to achieve things to be happy, is kind of being questioned right now. So that's kind of why I wanted to have you on the show, because part of the show is showing people how diverse the fashion industry is, and walking through life in different people's shoes. And yeah, your pair of shoes are a really beautiful and fascinating pair of shoes.
Thanks.
Yeah. So tell me
Thank
about
you so much.
Tell me about your store. That's where you are right now.
Yeah, I'm in the shop. It's in an old gas station from the 1930s. I've been here for 2 years now, and here, before I had this little shop, I had a barn up at my property, and if you knew about it, you knew about it, and people would drive up into the mountains, and they'd come to the barn, and they'd come shopping, and then, like, we'd take them to the hot springs, and go to the river, and just, you know, it was really fun. All the girls that work with me, they'd all come up to the cabin, and we'd all work up at the cabin. So we all we don't do that anymore. Now that I bought a house into town and I live in like a little neighborhood, everybody kind of works remotely from their house, and we all kind of know what we're doing. So
Nice.
all that I really do is kind of set stuff up and set people on their way. But the store's great. I love it. I miss being here. I look forward to opening the doors back up when all this craziness stops.
Yeah. Do you have any idea when that's going to be?
Here they're talking about maybe the 15th of May.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they extend it maybe until June 1, which is, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I have clients that like have been tested, and they kind of know their social distancing, what have you, whatnot. So I've been doing private appointments here just with like, you know, some of the girls that I sell stuff to, and, you know, I don't know, just and then we never really monkeyed around with online stuff, but I've been trying to post things more online and Instagram and all that, and actually it's been great when you have the whole world as kind of like your audience.
Yeah.
They've got a phone. I mean, I haven't skipped a beat. I've probably been a little bit busier. You know, so which is good. You know, it keeps everybody working, and you said something and I'd like to go back to it, you know, like with everything that's going on right now, people might be questioning things just in their own life and what's important. And you know, that's one of the gifts that's wrapped in really shitty paper that comes with something like this. As soon as this thing happened, I kept my eyes wide open and continue to for the gifts that will be in this. And I've seen and witnessed several just in my own life. And I know that there will be more. And just like that's like on a business note. Like on a personal note, oh my gosh, like I walk every single day. I can't tell you how many people have like these lawns that they're totally ripping up and planting row crops. And it's almost like this little bit of like a return to like a simpler thing. And like, maybe not like, we're going to be subsistence farmers out here. We're not. But people are returning to like the earth and getting their hands dirty and fostering, growing things.
Yeah.
I think it's huge. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah. It's so important because like right now, honestly, the only companies that are like making a buck off all of this situation are people like companies like Amazon, Walmart, like the big guys. And to be honest, I think this economics of scale is the reason why we're in this mess. It's the reason why the earth is warming and people are producing clothes on such a ridiculous scale. And I just think this kind of scale, this huge scale of doing business is just like not sustainable, and we do need to rely on ourselves a bit more and patronize small businesses and just do things the honest, beautiful way that it should be done. So that's really positive to see, like, humans just enjoying life in this stillness.
It is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
Yeah, totally. So like I was interested to know like how you're producing your pieces, and like you talked about the group of people who you have this wonderful relationship with who work from home. So are they making your pieces? Tell me.
Yeah, so I have a real small crew of artists. Let me think. There's 4 artists that work with me, and they all kind of specialize in what they do. And, some of them can like do other things, but real tight crew. I've been with most of them since, Cynthia and Yuki for 7 years now, maybe 8. Greta just came on board. Bobby from the beginning. So yeah, I mean, there's just four of us, mm-hmm. four of us plus me, 5.
Okay.
Yeah. And like, we're not doing, how can I say this? Like, I don't have, I didn't know what the hell a line sheet was, I don't know. I don't have a line sheet.
That's awesome.
Like, I'm making things that are like more one-offs.
Yeah.
And what I'm focusing on with clothing right now is real basic, simple silhouettes that are executed in all antique fabrics, antique buttons, finishings, everything. So everything that we've ever done is recycled, mm-hmm. And I think I mentioned to you, it wasn't like when that first started off, like that we were these, like these environmentally minded people that were making stuff in this real mindful kind way. We were just really broke and started this thing with absolutely nothing, and we could really only afford, I didn't have any tools to shape hats. So I lived on the river. So I just take hats that were old hats that I would buy at swap meets and wherever and shape them in the creek. And I still do that today.
Wow.
We'll do beadwork on stuff, and it's all recycled Venetian glass. You'll see those beautiful purses that they'd make during the turn of the century, and it's all that lovely glass. Well, a lot of times, most of the times, they back that stuff on satin or silk, and unless it was stored like perfectly, it just starts to turn to dust, right?
Silk.
But you'll have pounds of this beautiful glass that they haven't made, for 100 years, and it's all there for you to use on your work.
Your tools of the trade.
So it was just always kind of looking for things that, like, that's beautiful, that has some soul, that has some flavor, and it's totally discarded to that person because you can't use it in its condition.
Yeah.
And for me, those were all the building blocks that I started to and continue to make my stuff out of. And when I first started doing it, it wasn't something, like 10 years ago, people weren't running around looking for the things that I was looking for. I was that crazy dude that was buying roached out cowboy hats or purses that were falling apart or horse tack leather that was just completely, like, half of it was dry rotted. And people were like, what the heck is this guy doing? And now that's kind of become something that I think more people are like, hey, listen, this is a good way to do things.
Yeah. And
I realized later on, hey, this is like a really good vibe, what we're doing. This is like a high vibe thing.
Yeah.
Recycling things, we're actually showing people a lot of times, like, oh, wait, you'd give me like some money for something like this? I've got stuff like that. I was just going to throw it away. So it gets people thinking along those lines, what I mean? Like,
and like this, and also like it's kind of like the Japanese beauty aesthetic of finding beauty in decay. It's like old things are beautiful too. Like, actually, they're much more beautiful than new stuff, for sure. That's for sure. But it's a mindset too, and I feel like the cool thing about the internet is that people are exposed to a whole different range of the spectrum, which is really, really nice. I mean, there's pros and cons to the internet and the exposure of ideas on the internet, but I think, like, the more the better. If more people can see the world through a different pair of glasses, the better. And
I agree.
Yeah, totally. Tell me about the hand drawing. I'm really fascinated by the hand drawing. Like, are they all your ideas?
Yeah, so I'll come up with what we're going to do, and Cynthia, who is our artist, she has the ability to literally anything you can think of or anything that you could imagine or see and want to, she can do it and put it out there. And for me, having such a love for vintage clothing, those are the pieces that I would always be looking for, more than like, oh, it's this type of Harley Davidson shirt from the 70s. That's super cool. But like the shirt that somebody like drew in the 70s and like just did their own thing, that's such more a storytelling piece to me. Yeah. And that's just the kind of stuff that I really kind of gravitate towards and get very, very excited about if I find that stuff out in the world. So it was just really obvious that, hey, look, this is something that we're going to do because
it's
people,
like art.
Nobody, I don't know. I mean, I know that people are doing it now, I think is totally bitchin', but not as much, and to me, I just kind of feel like that voice of like, hey, look, let's silk screen off like 1,000 shirts or whatever. That voice is covered. Like we've got that, you know.
Yeah.
What are the voices that maybe we don't have? And I always think about like, well, what is it that I'm trying to say, and how is it that I'm going to say that? Whether it's like with one of our hand-drawn jackets or hats, or like we've been doing. It's so funny. I'll show you. Like I don't really watch the news, and then I was watching the news for like a week during the coronavirus, and here I'll get it. Like we started to do these hand-drawn shirts, and like like here's I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a skull with bat wings, and it's drawn.
Yeah.
Well, I was coming up with all this super creepy artwork because I was all freaked out because I was watching the news. And so all the stuff that we made for like a week, here's like the all-seeing eye and the clouds. It was all kind of, and then I was dyeing stuff darker. Like these are just vintage shirts from the 60s that were just all shitted out. But like all of the dyeing and like all of the art was quite dark for like about a week. And I stopped watching the news, and now I'm kind of back to flowers and hippie stuff, and you know, stuff that's more beautiful. And
yeah, the news gets really heavy. I think that
pardon me?
The news gets really heavy. Like one thing I found, like being here with being stuck in Thailand right now, not being able to go home and being under the same roof as my parents for the first time in a while. Like my parents are watching the news kind of on like non-stop all day long, and it makes me so anxious. Like, I mean, it's a commodity that thrives off anxiety and like fear mongering.
Fear. It's fear. It's just like your daily dose of fear. And I told myself that I was, I just want to be informed. And, you know, like, it's so very easy to get all wrapped up in it and be like, oh my gosh, what is the death count, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, I can't, you know, I've had to start my own counts, and like it's not that. It's like, how many people am I gonna like hug and high five when this shit is over? And I got a list, and it's getting bigger and bigger every day. And it's like I have to do stuff like that just like for my own. Yeah, just for me, for my own well-being, you know.
Totally.
And my out to everybody that's going through all this bullshit, and anybody that's like lost anybody, and like I've got several friends here in town that have had it or have it now, and I've been like buying groceries and dropping them off and like trying to do, you know, what I can do.
Yeah.
And having said all that, it's just like I'm with you, man. Like the news, it's what I need, you know.
Yeah. I've been finding that I can't watch the news if it's on TV, or I can't read the news with, you know, the photos. I'm a very visual person, but I can listen to the BBC radio news. That's a really great source that's been helping me a lot, because it's too much with all the visuals, and I feel like people cannot function when they're captivated by fear. And, you know, like we're useless when we're overcome with fear. We turn into like animals, and, you know,
we're buying 500 rolls of toilet paper and like just doing crazy for people.
Yeah, totally. So I feel like, I mean, we need a balance for sure. But, you know, for my business, it's been really hard. Like, definitely not as hard as many other people with storefronts. But, you know, it's a scary time. And, you know, in the beginning, I was like, you know, really worried. But it wasn't helping me at all. It wasn't like getting me through. It wasn't kind of, I was making bad decisions, you know, like I just needed to be able to think clearly, and watching the news was like too overwhelming. But I think it's important to be connected, to understand what's going on in the world. Like where I live in northern France, it's a really remote place. And like our town, there's like 2,000 people in our town. And it's like, to be honest, it's like the widest part of France. But the people are super lovely, and, you know, relatively lovely to us. My husband is also half Asian, so we're kind of the weird art people in our neighborhood. People don't really know what we do because we don't leave home every day.
Right.
So they think we don't work. But anyway, like people where I live, they I feel like they watch local news, which is very France focused. But I feel like it's important to widen your spectrum and see what's going on in the other parts of the world, so that you can you don't fear other races. You don't you care a little bit. Your heart opens a little bit more. But it is very difficult to open your heart to different cultures and kinds of people and different ways of life when the source of information you're getting this from is like fear mongering and you know, just preying on your primal instincts too. So I feel like there's definitely pros and cons of, you know, following the news. Yeah, it's a weird time for sure. But
it's definitely a weird time.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. I have to say, though, you know, I was talking with a dear friend of mine in Austin, Texas, and she said something, and it stuck with me for a moment. And I was like, huh, yeah, no, I get it. That makes sense. And she said that she had never, I mean, you know, like I had grandparents, and they lived through the Great Depression. You know, and they'd tell me stories about, like, you know, like spreading lard like on a piece of stale bread, and like that was their meal for the day. And like, you know, both of my grandfathers were in the Second World War. You know, like I was born in 1969. I'm 51 years old. I've had a pretty cush jam. You know what I mean? I haven't had a lot of things that I've had to really live through, you know. This is one of those things where, you know, you're living through this thing where you can really like get up off the couch and do something. You know, you can go make masks, you can go buy food for your friends that are sick, you can make do with the things that you have because they're out of a bunch of stuff. And like we of course wash lots of fabrics, and I hand wash a lot of stuff, and you know, but then I have a machine, and then I have a dryer. Well, my dryer broke when all this stuff happened, and as opposed to having somebody come fix it, I was like, oh, I'll just hang stuff out to air dry, and my whole backyard is just like all this beautiful fabric blowing in the wind, and like, and you know, I've had all these little tiny things where it's like, we had our furnace broke in the house too, and now it's quite warm, so it really doesn't matter. But 2 months ago, it was quite cold up here for Southern California. And so we have these huge, massive fires every night. And myself and my child and my lady, we'd all get in front of this fire, and like we'd play games, and this thing would be rip-roaring all night. And I'd wake up at like 2 a.m. and put some more logs in there. And that's actually how we used to heat our home when we lived up in the mountains with a potbelly stove. And it was just kind of like, you know, you get, not to say that, you know, any of that's like some great hardship. It isn't. But again, it's like just, making do with what you have.
Yeah. To me, it's like getting rid of the noise.
That's been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been amazing. There's no airplane contrails in the air. They said I don't go to Los Angeles all that much. I know that's where I met you, so I'm down there to shop, like at the markets and stuff, maybe a couple times a month, and that's about it. But they said it's the first time that they've been able to see the downtown LA skyline unobstructed in like 50 years.
Yeah.
I mean, they're, and even here in this little place where I'm at, like I do quite a bit of hiking and I'm outdoors quite a bit. And I can't tell you how many people I've never, ever seen up on the trail in my life. And I'm seeing them on either a regular basis. And then there's a new little crop of people that come into the mix of things pretty much daily.
Nice.
And, they're getting out there and again, it's just looking for the hidden gifts.
Yeah.
And looking for positive stuff.
You know what's super happy right now? All the wildflowers of the world. Actually, it was one piece I listened to on the BBC radio. They did a whole piece on how all the wildflowers in the UK are just thriving right now because all the councils have stopped cutting the grass. So, they've eliminated that part of the council servicing. And like wildlife is so happy for it. It's so awesome, and different varieties of wildflower this year that, haven't been around for a long time have all come back and,
Oh, yeah.
so awesome, so beautiful at the same time. Yeah.
It really is. It really is. It absolutely is. And it's probably why everything that I've been making as of late has to have like flowers in it,
nice.
I was going to do this thing for the spring and the summer. Did you ever see that movie Point Break, the first one with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves?
I think I saw it like a long time ago.
It's made by Kathleen Bigelow. It's a really cool movie from, I think, like the 90s. And these surfer bank robber dudes, the ex-presidents,
yes.
they all dressed pretty dope. And so my whole thing for summer was going to be on the ex-presidents. And then all this shit went down and it's like, no, like everything's flowers, like everything's like just
happy.
The most beautiful, romantic, like lovely, like stuff that I can find. And it's just that, you know what I mean? And it's like,
well, we need that.
Kind of what people need, I think, right now. They need like beauty and they need like just, like lush flowers.
Yeah, I think we need that for ourselves. And to me, that's why I always have thought of your work as art rather than just, than wearable objects, because to me, the role of art is to show people the beauty of every day that they forget about in their lives, that the noise kind of distracts you from like, looking at your phone screen all day or going to work and just sitting there hating your job or, or loving your job, but being distracted from the real natural world that we are living in and we share with, with nature. So I think like art, even though I think art is super important. It's probably one of the most important, in my opinion, most important aspect of being human. And so I think you're totally right. We really need to have some positivity and be reminded about like how freaking beautiful the world is, that, like nature doesn't care that we're all having this economic crisis and lockdown. It couldn't care less. It's probably happy for it, which is incredible to think about as well. Yeah. You're the hat that you did with the mushroom and the teddy bears.
Oh yeah,
that's my favorite.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's fun.
Do you know of this guy called Paul Stamets? He's like the mushroom guy. So he is a mycologist, and he's like, he has this.
Is he like the world renowned?
Yes.
I sold him a mushroom hat.
No.
I'm almost positive at.
Dude, he's my hero.
At this show that I did called Mercado Sagrado, because someone had left, and it was this guy that, you know, I'm always amazed at like what pieces speak to what people.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I don't do a lot of shows anymore, but I used to do quite a bit of, I travel, I do like little music festivals, and I do these little happenings, and one of the coolest thing about that, I think, is getting to meet all these wonderful people.
Oh yeah.
And then getting to see where your stuff ends up, and like who it speaks to and why, and like how they feel, you know, like that whole reason why we're doing things, or, you know, is to communicate and to touch someone.
Yeah.
And not to say that you don't get that vibe like when you're selling something, because I'm a person, I have pictures of in my phone, like a grandfather has pictures of his grandkids, of everybody that's bought stuff and been kind enough to send me them wearing their stuff out in the world. And I'm like, ooh, cool. And I just save it. And like, I look at that stuff and like, that means something to me.
Absolutely.
And when you go to these shows, you get to see the person like put the hat on and like not take it off, and just like, you know, make the connection. And I mean, that was really amazing. And
it's inspiring in itself. It's like an energy that inspires you to make more, I think.
It absolutely is. It's more gas for the tank, for sure. Yeah. It definitely keeps you rocking and rolling, and I think it's a really good energy exchange, you know, because you made somebody very, very happy, hopefully, if you did your job right. And then, you know, you feel really happy because you wanted to, like, if they bought a bear and a mushroom hat or something like that, that's something where it's like, it's just joyful, and it's like happy, and it's just kind of like, I didn't, you know, if you were to tell me that I was going to be wearing this rainbow mushroom Jerry Bear hat, I wouldn't have believed you like 6 months ago. And yet here I am with this thing, and I refuse to take it off my head. And like, there they go down the road with it. But I think this mushroom guy that you're talking about, I think he was at this show. He bought the mushroom hat, and then this guy came up behind him and was like, that's so-and-so, and he's the world's most renowned mushroom dude
guy.
And it's like, well, then he's got a good hat then, because like that thing's like mushroomed out all the way.
Yeah, dude, you should watch. What put me on him like 10 years ago when I was, you know, at art school, was like his video. He did a TED talk on how mushrooms can save the world. And it was the most inspiring video. You know, it's a short one, but he basically, in the video, he showed an experiment that they did with in collaboration with one of the big oil companies. And it was, the purpose of the experiment was to see the most effective way of regenerating an area after an oil spill. So if you can picture this, there was like 3 piles, I think it was 3 piles of crude, you know, oil to mimic the scenario. And so Paul, he injected his pile with mycelium spores, like a kind of mushroom spore, and they covered them up, all three. I think the other two, I can't remember what the other two, there was one control, and then the other pile, I'm not sure what they did with that, but they tried another solution for a different team. And dude, after a couple of weeks, I think it was, not only was the oil completely gone because it had been, what do you call it? It had been eaten by the mushroom mycelium, but there was a thriving ecosystem of bugs and plants and flowers, and and there was no smell left after this. The other two piles were disgusting, had festered, were smelling, had not changed. But his mushroom pile, I kid you not, turned into an oasis. And
that's amazing.
I think they tested, the soil for, residue of oil. There was no petrochemical residue after that. This guy is incredible. And I just, one other thing that is really rad about this guy is he wears a mushroom hat, like an actual hat made of mushroom. It's like, it's like some kind of, it's like apparently it's like I think it's like some Hungarian folk hat.
You know what? I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so cool. But this guy, I mean, there are so many incredible humans in the world, and the fact that you guys connected just blows my mind right now. That's rad.
I'm not 100% positive because
if you did,
but I'm almost positive that it was the guy that you're talking about, because this show that I do every year out here called Mercado Sagrado, it's like this amazing, like Southern California, like hippie Renaissance, like all these makers come to this big, massive, field out in the Santa Monica Mountains, and it's like a 2-day thing, but then they'll give these lectures and these workshops, and then there's amazing food, and then people selling their wares. It's like,
it sounds really beautiful. It sounds like a fun place.
It feels like what I would imagine like a happening would be like in the 60s. I was born in 1969, so I don't know, what that was all about. But this is what that has always felt like to me. It's just this really jammy, beautiful, people just kind of coming in and out. And it's always been the most beautiful location. And you'll have all these different people from all over the place that come to it.
Yeah.
So
that's the cool thing about California, I think. There's real vibe to it. Like for someone like me who comes from the opposite side of the world, California to me is this really romantic mixing pot of flower power, self-exploration, and a melting pot of people. It was really inspiring for me to go. That's when I met you. What was that? Probably a couple years ago. Maybe about a year.
Time flies, but it was a minute ago for sure.
Yeah, but
I totally agree with you. I couldn't wait to get the hell out of California. I grew up down the street on the beach in Ventura as a little kid, and I couldn't wait to get out of Ventura when I was a young man. So when I was a teenager, I moved to New York City and traveled and just lived all over the place. And it was amazing because from the age of, let's say, 16 years old until 30 is maybe when I came back to California. I can't tell you how much I missed and appreciated this place that I had grown up and all this magic that was here. And, you know, you take it for granted, or you just like, this is boring. No, it's not. I can't believe how bitchin' it is where we live, and the whole world like has figured it out, man, and they're coming from all over the place to be part of it, and that makes me pretty stoked too, because then you get all these people coming from all over the world and just bringing their whole trip and adding like notes to the song. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like a big minestrone soup.
It is. It's amazing.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, get it out. It's awesome.
Well, I can't wait to get back there one day. Speaking of which, I want to talk about where your store is, in a place called Valley of the Moon.
Yeah.
What a romantic name.
Yeah, that's the name of my store.
Right on.
So my store is called Valley of the Moon, and it's Ojai is a Chumash word for like moon's nest or Valley of the Moon. The Chumash were Native Americans that populated this whole area and down in Ventura as well.
So
isn't that a beautiful name?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what else that I found there was like a freaky link was, so I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, that's where the Sonoma Valley is as well? Are you...
Okay, so the Sonoma Valley would be north, a little bit more like towards, like San Francisco and like the wine country up there. Right. And then I'm about an hour and a half northeast of Los Angeles. And if you drive, let's say from Malibu, you'll hit a town called like Ventura. And then you're still on the coast. If you kept going up, you'd hit a town called Santa Barbara. As soon as you hit Ventura, you just head due east like 20 minutes up into the hills, and that's Ojai.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there like much agricultural activity where you are living?
Yeah, so we grow a lot of citrus up here. And what else do we grow? Then we have the Oxnard Basin, which is right down like kind of where Ventura and closer to the beach. And it's probably some of the lushest ground and topsoil on the planet Earth. I think they have over 30 foot of topsoil. So they can grow anything like real perishable stuff like strawberries, and then like real easy stuff like onions and lettuces and celery. They grow everything there. We mostly do citrus up here, and I mean, there are some smaller, like, organic farms that do, like, stuff. Here in town, there's this really rad dude named BD, and he has this organic farm, and he grows everything from, like, flowers to, lettuces, you name it. But we don't have tons of ag up here anymore. What Ojai is mostly is it's this getaway place where people come from all over the world, and then tons of people come from the Los Angeles area, and they cruise up here just to get the hell out of LA for a minute and just kind of bliss out. Nice. We have hot springs that are like natural hot springs.
Oh, wow.
So like most places that have hot springs, many, many years ago, people would come to hot springs with all these different ailments. So what happens is all these towns, ours included, they become like these like vortex places for healing for people. So it's like super hippie, you know what I mean? And there's like all these like, just
the healing waters of the Ojai hot springs.
Yes.
Sounds magical. Well,
it's magical.
Well, thanks so much, John, for hanging out with me. It's been like real fun.
It has been fun.
Yeah.
And thanks for being my first Skype. It was so painless. I I was like, oh man, I'm gonna like screw this all up, and like I was downloading the thing and like trying to figure stuff out. I'm really technology.
Me too, man. Like I was freaking out a little bit, but it all went well. Hopefully, this is all recorded. That's my next hurdle to jump over. But for folks out there who want to check out your stuff, how can they see your stuff from all around the world?
Just go to just check out my jam on IG. It's Sam Roberts up. And then if you dig what you see on there, I'm sure there's like a link to a website or something like that. They're fully rebuilding my website right now. I don't know anything about it, but it's supposed to be pretty cool.
All right. Well, thanks so much, John. Take it easy.
Healthy.